are going to call the April Public Safety meeting to order. I have with me today Councilwoman Sheila Vaccaro and myself, Lisa Dorsey, and we're going to get right into it. So we'll start with comments, suggestions, and petitions by residents for items not on the agenda tonight. Okay. Discussion items, the monthly fire department.
Good evening, Steve Palma, Fire Chief. If you take a look at our report, hello, Nick. Our report for the month of March, a little bit of a slow start for us for the first quarter. We kind of had to check our phones and pagers to make sure everything was still working, but it seems like now in April, our numbers are coming right back up to where they should be. Only really significant incident to speak of, we had a vehicle fire on 202 that was a result of a vehicle accident. A couple things to talk about. On March 29th, the Borough Safety Committee, along with the safety officers of the fire department, conducted a evacuation or fire drill at Borough Hall. So overall went very well. The team wrote up a procedure for evacuation of this building. In 53 seconds, the entire building was evacuated, which is a great timing, I should say, but something to be aware of, at least for council members, because you guys weren't present for it, and just something to talk about. There are two exits within the chambers here. So obviously the door into the rear here, down the stair tower. The actual muster point is the park out back next to the radio tower. So at that point, each individual department would be asked to take an accountability of everybody, make sure everybody's out. You also have a secondary, the main doors coming in, and you could certainly go out the front of the building or through to the back parking lot. So they were a couple things that the team just asked to pass on. Also, our alarm system in this building does not call out to 911. So just a reminder to everybody, if there is a fire, we either have to notify the dispatcher downstairs through one of the representatives of the police department, and they call the county to activate the fire department, or somebody will actually have to call 911 for that. We also would ask any police officers to help us secure the building, make sure people don't come back in if there's anything going on with that. But they were a couple of the action items I just wanted to pass on. But overall, very good drill and a great step forward for emergency planning here at the borough. On April 29th, Saturday, April 29th, we're partnering with the Red Cross for a Sound the Alarm event on Saturday, April 29th. It's going to kick off at 9:30 at the Fame Fire Company, and you're all invited for that. But the volunteers from the Red Cross, along with the fire department, are going to canvass the borough in teams of 3 or 4 to hand out and install smoke detectors in areas where people may be less fortunate and would need smoke detectors. So again, you guys are more than welcome to just come for the kickoff or be any part of that process. But pretty exciting event that we're going to do here in the borough on April 29th. Let's see, what else did I have? I think that is it. Any questions?
Thanks, Chief Pelna. Actually, 2 questions. The Sound the Alarm, have we done that in the past?
No.
Okay, it didn't sound familiar to me.
Yeah.
That's a great event. So
Yeah.
thank you for coordinating that. And then the other question I had was around, why is there a reason this building doesn't dial out to 911?
I don't know if anybody can help me. Go ahead, Kevin. Come save me.
So the fire alarm system, there are exemptions under the NFPA standards for fire alarm systems. Because this building is occupied 24 hours a day, and we have dispatchers downstairs who can monitor the fire alarm in case of an activation, it does not require for it to report out to a central monitoring station.
I'm not sure how to respond to that. Just seems like an extra step in an emergency, but maybe that's just me.
Well, there's other things to consider. We have prisoners downstairs. So if the fire alarm were to be activated, and those doors have to release at a certain point. So it's because there's people in the building like the dispatchers and police officers. If the alarm is activated, they can go check it out to see what's going on in the building. And if it's not a problem, it's a false alarm, we can just reset it. If there is an issue, then those dispatchers then can contact, to have the fire department dispatched. So it is in that sense, a central monitoring station that we have built into the building. There's no need for it to report out where that company that would then call 911 to have the fire department dispatch. We would just do it internally.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. Anything else? No, thank you,
And
Chief.
just to build on that, the procedure for relocation, the dispatchers would go to the county, to the Government Services Center at the 911 center, and the prisoners will be taken to the lockup at the county, the sheriff's. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Moving along to the Police Department, Chief Moorhead.
Good evening, James Moorhead, Chief of Police. The month of March was non-remarkable for the police department. We responded to 3,376 calls for service, of which 2,653 were in the borough. Our Part 1 and Part 2 crime was slightly below this time last year. Nothing significant to talk about there. Newly hired officer in October of 2022, Zach Turner, graduated the police academy on March 3rd. Department training was conducted throughout the month of March, where all officers were certified, did their annual firearm certification, but also were recertified in control tactics and also emergency vehicle operations. And more officers in this country hurt or kill themselves by car accidents than they do gunfire. So very important training that the department received this month. I'd like to thank all the trainers. April 22nd of this month, Saturday, is Earth Day. Myself and my family, the mayor, will be out picking up trash throughout the borough. We'd like to invite anybody who's available to come attend. We'll have a tent out back on Saturday morning to hand out materials, trash bags, pickup devices, et cetera, to help with that. So we'd appreciate anybody coming out to help. And finally, I'd like to mention that the month of April is Telecommunicator Month or Dispatcher Month. So I'd like to thank all of Westchester's dispatchers for their service, as well as the county dispatchers who are so important to what we do. They're obviously not out on the front lines, but they're giving us all the information to have us operate safely and with as much information as possible on the front line. So I'd like to thank all of our dispatchers throughout the county and here in Westchester. Take any questions you might have.
Thanks, Chief. I don't have any questions. Ms. Vaccaro, Mr. Allen? Thanks, Chief.
All right, thank you.
And last but not least, Emergency Services.
Good evening, Chaz Bergen. I'm the EMS chief from Good Fellowship Ambulance. In the month of March, we responded to a total of 676 calls, 196 of which were in Westchester Borough. We continue to see that call volume increase year after year. So the first 3 months in the borough here were busier. Pretty normal in our hours and day of the week here. Obviously weekends and weekend nights get busy. So other than that, really nothing else outstanding on the report. Unless there's any questions on that. The only other thing I wanted to mention was our Westchester University division. We started in December. So we have college students that are EMTs responding to calls. We've built them to a point where they're actually coming off campus now, responding to emergencies through the borough. So that's been a helpful resource when we're busy, and they've done that a lot lately. So they're doing great work down there. Any questions?
That's great. Thank you. No questions.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item 3D, the Price Street traffic calming update.
If
Mr.
I
Mitchell?
may, I just wanted to provide an update of actions taken since we last talked about this intersection and this roadway and identified the speeding problem on this street. The borough traffic engineer is working currently to complete the four-way stop analysis, and that requires pedestrian counts and crash data that's being collected. That's step number one. Number two, the traffic engineer is going to assist with the borough to apply to PennDOT to modify crosswalks according to their recommendations. That requires an application to PennDOT to do so. And the recommendations for striping near intersections and adding a pedestrian crossing sign. We can't do anything in the roadway without PennDOT's permission, so we're working on getting that permission. Meanwhile, we can go out and address any existing maintenance issues. So that's a work order item currently in Public Works. And the digital speed sign, excuse me, was just delivered to the police department. It's charging right out on the. Yeah. It will be deployed as soon as it's ready, and that will have an effect on speeding, hopefully. Our hope is that when we get to a point where we've implemented some or all of these recommendations, that with the PD's help, we'll go out and do another speed survey and see if it's had any effect. Some other possible things we could look at would be, we've talked about internally, would be allowing, currently we do allow parking on Price Street. However, it's just not utilized. It's permit parking. So there was the thought of removing the residential parking zone in that area, and essentially to invite more cars to park on Price Street. Cars are a natural traffic calming barrier. It'll narrow the roadway. And if it creates a problem for residents, there's no reason we can't put it back in place. I think we should try it out, honestly. And that's something we'll talk about in the parking committee in May. I know that Chris Pielli has been contacted by the neighbors, and he's interested in understanding what we're up to. And to that end, I've kept him informed and his office informed. I also want everyone listening who might have an interest or be from the neighborhood to know that we have several state roadways in the borough that are in need of a closer look and a study, kind of like what we did on South High Street. If you are familiar with what I'm talking about, in 2020, the borough worked with its traffic engineer, got a grant to develop a concept plan for streetscape improvements to improve the safety for motorists, pedestrians, cyclists, all the way from Market Street to Rosedale. And I like to think that plan had a lot to do with PennDOT selecting a large portion of that corridor as a candidate for its highway safety improvement project, the project that we've been talking about that's now in final design that will have a direct impact. It's going to be over a $3 million investment of taxpayer money through PennDOT that the borough doesn't have to contribute to. So that's really, that's a good thing. And that really shows how if you do proper planning, it can lead to good things, but that those big ticket items take time to put in place. It's just the way it works. We identified several state-owned streets, Price being one of them, North High Street being another, Hannum Avenue being a third, and then the corridor that's right outside our office building here for essentially Route 3, both the east and west directions, as good candidates for this kind of study that would allow us then to prioritize what we want to do in the borough. We can't do 5 things at once. So our hope is to bring that decision to you, council, to decide where you want to focus energy, and maybe over several years time, we do get studies done everywhere we need to, and we can have several concurrent streetscape projects going on at once, and also coordinating with stormwater improvements. So I wanted to share a bigger vision with you all for what's happening, because we spent a lot of time talking about one intersection and its impacts to people. It's also connected to many intersections and many locations in the borough. And we recognize that, and we want to give you guys on council the power to sort of set the stage for what you want us to focus on. That's all I have. Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Metrick, I may have missed it. What's the process for that study to be initiated?
We have to find money.
For the study?
Yeah, it's really that simple. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
which currently is not in the budget.
Correct, not in this year's budget.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sure, let me get comments from council and then I'll welcome the audience. Ms. Vaccaro?
I have been working with RVE and Sean on this because this is my neighborhood. And I know my neighbors are all sitting back there. So this is something very important to me and very close to home. I have been keeping track. They put up a camera to do pedestrian counts. They got it on 327. They deployed it on 4-5. The company sent the data back on 411 and the report is currently being pulled together. It's not ready. Nobody's seen it yet. So nothing moves quickly. Everything is very slow. Now we have to wait for that engineering report to come back. And then there are stages and we need to find money for each and every step along the way. This is the procedure and we're going to keep moving it forward as best as we can. I would hope that the rest of council would recognize how very important this is to the community living there. So when we do get to the time of making a larger plan about these things, I think we need to take that into account, how very important this is to the people trying to quietly live on Price Street, which is very questionable at this time, but working towards it.
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Vaccaro. I think, well, we certainly have heard the concerns of the neighbors on Price Street. And I think, from the last meeting, we have tried to implement steps, incremental steps to help manage the process. But I also take into consideration Mr. Metrick's point around a larger study around these areas of concern, particularly for the state roads. Mr. Allen? No comments? I'll welcome questions from the galley. Ms. Stanton, can I ask you to come to the microphone, please? But folks at home can't hear you.
Thank you, Sean, for the update. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Sheila, for your support. I guess I would want to start by saying that Price Street calming was not our initial objective. Of course, it is, an objective. We remain committed to the multi-way stop for the very many reasons that we have laid out. We still think that it is a critical element to a plan for Price Street. And we already know from the initial engineering study that one of the warrants for a multi-way stop has been met, which is the volume of traffic. So we're not just talking about speed on Price, we're talking about volume. We have 12 hours a day where there are greater than 300 vehicles traversing Price Street through that intersection. That is one of the criteria that PennDOT, through the manual, has put forth. Because we pretty much, I think, know that the accident warrants aren't going to be met, which really is a good thing. We don't want accidents at that. So we're starting to get an idea of the process of what the engineers are doing. Do we have any time frame for when we expect the engineers to finish the next stage of the study?
We should have, it's not a complex study,
Right.
right? So, and we're not paying a lot for it. It's not free either. And I do think probably by next month, there's a good chance we'll have it.
Okay. And then once the study is back, do we come back for consideration by the committee?
Yeah, I would need council's approval to make an application to PennDOT based upon traffic engineer study. They may say, we think PennDOT will award this. They may say, we don't think PennDOT will award this. So that'll be council's choice to make application, but I can't, in fact, the application needs council's approval.
Full council or Okay, full council. Okay. All right. That's good to clarify that. The only other comment that I want to make is that I attended the planning commission meeting, I don't know, it was 10 days ago or something, for the development at Price and High Street. And in addition to all of the actions that have been taken by other townships, our own borough decision makers, including placing the stop signs on Minor, which has diverted traffic to Price Street, including putting speed bumps on Rosedale, which has diverted traffic onto Price Street, and the development of Darlington Ridge, which has brought increases in traffic volume to Price Street. Now we're talking about having 125 apartments and 9,000 square feet of retail on the corner of High and Price Street, with the ingress and the egress being on Price Street. So I hope that the consideration is given to the, I saw what RVE did on they're trying to project traffic counts for Price Street coming off of that development. They've already developed some preliminary, volume projections for the intersection and for Price, and it's going to be significant. And I'm very frustrated because we live in this neighborhood and actions are being taken which are going to put massive amounts of more cars onto Price Street. And yet we're still dithering about a stop sign at Price and Brandywine so that people can cross the street and the neighbors can live in relative security of knowing that if they go outside, they're not going to get hit by a car. So that's all I'm going to say. I know we don't have, hard and fast numbers on that. And I know that's down the road, but it's big. It's really big. And it's going to have a big impact on our neighborhood. And it seems like it's not going to be stopped at this point. So I would like that to be taken into consideration when we talk about downstream, so to speak, impacts onto our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure, Mr. Vitolo?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment. And one big ditto behind everything that was just said by Patty. Yeah, the current concerns are pretty significant, but they go just beyond the immediate developments that we're talking about. One particular concern that I do have is the warehousing site that has been approved by the borough by a vote of 7-0. And it's not clear to me basically how truck traffic is going to be managed coming in and out of that site. I have professional relationships with the A. Dewey Powell from a business standpoint, and they've expressed concerns to me about how these vehicles are going to get in and out. And there's been no data or information submitted by the developer at this point as to how this is all going to happen. We've got over 5 miles of state roads in the borough of Westchester. We've got a square mile area of 1.8 miles. And my question is, what are we going to do to prohibit or prevent extraordinary volumes of trucks coming through Westchester, either from Pottstown Pike going south or via Route 52, for example? So I think that has to be a major concern, because as far as state roads are concerned, trucking companies pay taxes to the state of Pennsylvania. And basically they therefore have full access to any state road where they can basically travel. So I think that this has got to be a concern. And I think, as you know, I chaired the ad hoc committee years ago, which after many years, we were able to get Route 100 out of Westchester, which resulted in a substantial reduction in through truck vehicle volume. We don't see the 18-wheelers coming through here that we used to. We see a lot of local deliveries. We see some, shorter 20-foot vans for the most part, but we just don't see those big rigs coming through anymore. So that's a concern that I do have, and I think that's something that the safety committee has got to take into consideration going forward. One other comment regarding stop signs. Okay, I was going to go to PennDOT's website today, and I expected probably to see something like "Thou shalt not put up stop sign because PennDOT does not like stop signs. Their standards are rigorous and they refuse them much more than they actually approve them. I just completed reading a fantastic book called The Death of Expertise. It's just an amazing book that I recommend to everyone I see. And the one comment that they make, or the author makes in this, is that you need experts in a republic, okay? But the experts are not always right and they're not always wrong, okay? And you really need to take that into consideration, that basically experts who are brought in by government to provide opinions, expertise, analysis, et cetera, do exactly that. They provide a perspective, but the final decision has got to remain, I think, ultimately with our elected officials. The one question I did raise the last time we were here about a month ago was, why not put up a four-way stop sign? No one seems to be addressing that question. What are the downsides associated with it? And that's the one question I'm asking you to consider as we move forward and as you continue to collect data from us and from the engineering community and from Sean Metrick's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Metrick, can you keep me honest here around the four-way stop on a state road? Is that something that also has to go through PennDOT, if I recall correctly? Okay. And there are certain criteria to be met? Just wanted to make sure we answered that question. Thank you. Any other comments? Sure. You want to come on up to the podium?
Excuse me, I live on 415 Price. My comment is more directed to the gentleman who suggested perhaps we remove resident parking in that area. And personally, I'm not a fan of that idea at all for the following reasons. One of which, I have brothers that often come by, they swing by, they like to stop by the house. If it's full of cars parked there, they can't do that and just drop off. I like to be able to pull up to the front of the house and unload my car. I don't want to have to worry about dealing with other cars parked there. And another, if there were a lot of cars parked on the street, then at Brandywine, cars kind of have to creep out to see the cars that are coming in either direction because there's no stop sign. So I think that might actually be a problem. I also think, as far as slowing traffic down, to try that, I've lived in Philly, I've lived in Boston, small streets, lots of cars, and the traffic still moves pretty quickly. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Any other comments today? Okay. Thank you. We will anxiously await the report from RVE, regarding the traffic study and crash study. Thanks. Moving on to 3E, the ordinance amendment for Civil Service Commission alternates.
Hello again, Jim Moorhead, Police Chief. Just to follow up briefly on Sean's comment about the new speed sign trailer, we did receive it. The traffic unit received its training today, and the sign is currently being tested out front of the Borough Building to make sure it's functioning properly while we wait for the identification stickers, decals to come in for it. Once we have those and the speed sign is lettered, then it will go into service. I wouldn't anticipate it being more than a couple of weeks.
Thank you. That was my next question. Thanks.
Yep. Civil Service has 3 board members on it with no room for alternates based on the way the ordinance is written in the borough. We're seeking an ordinance change to add 2 alternates to the Civil Service Commission. As you know, forgot Troy's last name. Troy Chapman, Tony Polito, and Reese Davis, part of the 3 members, and 1, possibly 2 of them are looking to leave this year. If we have borough approved alternates to get onto civil service, it'll make the transition smoother, considering the fact that this year is a hiring year for the police department, and I expect 2024 to be very busy with promotions and hiring as well due to impending retirements. So based on that, I think it's wise for civil service to be better prepared, having two alternates that could step in and help make decisions so that civil service doesn't have a gap in its service to the borough. So this would require an ordinance by full council, and we're hopeful to start the process here tonight.
Do we know when the current members plan to step down or when their terms expire? Is that this year or
One member
next
would
year?
like to step down ASAP, but he's willing to hang on until hopefully an alternate can come on and have voting power in the absence of that member. The second one, he's up in the air right now, but he's talking possibly the end of this year.
Mr. Metrics, any thoughts on the ordinance and maybe why the ordinance is written the way it is today?
I can only speculate. It just simply states that the Civil Service Commission shall consist of 3 members. Other municipalities do have alternates ordained in their code for the reason Jim just mentioned. I like the idea, honestly, and I like it for the zoning hearing board too, because if you have an absent, administrative boards have to meet, and they're not advisory. They actually have real, I don't want to say real power, but because the other boards have powers too, but they take administrative action that has consequences. So if you have a 3-member Civil Service Commission board and one of the members can't be there, now you have an even number, and that can get dicey when you try and make a decision, because there's no mayor in the Civil Service Commission to break a tie. So I like the idea of appointing an alternate. We just can't do it without changing the ordinance. We just can't unilaterally do it.
And just one more
Right.
point, when 3 civil service members are in attendance, the 2 alternates can attend the meetings, but they have no voting power.
Thank you. Ms. Vaccaro?
I'm fine with this.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any comments regarding 3E? All right, we'll move on to the update from the Westchester Emergency Operation Plan.
Good evening. John Brill, the Emergency Management Coordinator for the Borough of Westchester. Annually, municipal emergency management agencies, along with the county, are encouraged by PEMA to do a complete review of their documentation to make sure that everything's up to date, current, reads the way it's supposed to, and we've met any observed unmet needs. So Dave March, who's my deputy, and I, we've gone through this. And there are 3 sections to our emergency operations plan. There's the plan itself, there's a resource and notifications manual, and then there's a number of checklists that we use during an emergency. So the 2 pieces that did receive some updates this year are the emergency operations plan. Some minor additions were made to that. And most of it is in our notifications and resource manual. So we have changes in resources, how we contact for resources we need during an emergency. And also we had a number of changes in personnel here in the borough in major positions. So we updated all that information. So what we're asking is for you to consider adopting a resolution that says that the current plan that we put before you supersedes all previous plans.
No questions. Mr. Allen? Thank you very much. Any questions on that agenda item? Okay, moving on to action item number 4. Agenda item number 4, action items, approve the March minutes for public safety. Any questions?
Approved.
Changes? Thank you. Any other business tonight for public safety? All right, I will adjourn the meeting at 6:06. Thank you, everyone.